Hi everyone, my name is Grant Watling. I'm a Chief Customer Officer at HICX Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about digital transformation for supplier management and how you go about getting a mandate for change. So let's start with what digital supplier management means in this context. The real opportunity with digital is how do we take away from our human capital the non-value add, the repetitive, the mundane tasks that we can pass across to a software that will do those processes and those tasks in a more efficient and a more effective way. So if we look at the continuum on the far left, really what we want is our people doing judgment-based, unstructured, problem-solving and value-adding activities, where in their day they have repetitive or semi-structured tasks or things that can be manually triggered. Then we can use software. Software can be installed and can take care of some of those tasks. As our software capability matures and we can program it in such a way that it can actually take care of all of the repetitive, structured or event items. The end state of this is that we provide enough information and richness that the software can then start to learn, and we can feed it in a way that will use a probabilistic model and determine options for next steps and actions. So where we see software predominantly deployed right now are in the two middle sections here. So something that we can trigger ourselves that will take care of a task and we set it running, or something that can be running in the background behind the scenes that will take care of some of the administrative items that we really don't need to have our people doing. We know that digital is disrupting our world, and we also know that it's also impacting our world in several ways. And the difference being an impact will be maybe a slight change, a tweak, an enhancement, whereas digital is completely, in terms of disrupting, completely changing the way we go about doing things. In this sense of procurement and operations, we take globalization for an example. The advent of digital is completely changing the way we go about doing things at a global level. We are far more integrated, far more interconnected, far more able to think at a global level than we ever were in the past. And that ripples through the way that we do things, or we think about tackling risk or analytics or the importance of data itself. Where we see the effects of that will be coming through in other areas of our business. So it may be our revenue management or our strategic sourcing. Yeah, some of these things could be perceived as being impacted, but also with some of the latest technology, there are the potential to disrupt these items as well. The main barriers that we see when people are deploying a digital application really come down to data quality and lack of data integration. This was studied in 2015 by MIT and Deloitte, and their study revealed that while 90% of people feel that their industries will be disrupted, only 44% are preparing adequately for those disruptions to come. So when you're thinking about obtaining your mandate for change, if you believe that there is an opportunity for digital in your business, and you need to encourage and to compel others to think the same way, then what we need is data points. We need to really map out the why and understand at a more granular level how this is going to be a force for good in your organization. So to do that and to really understand these barriers, not only have we got the data quality and integration barriers, we then have to think about our people and our current technology. Those four key areas really are the ones that if we can overcome them, then actually we can start to ripple through the rest of the barriers and knock them down in kind of a domino effect. So the change is coming. We know it is, but as we recognise in our business, not everyone might be ready or willing, or maybe has an agenda that is not going to be supported by digital and might disrupt their lives. So how do we get them on board? One way is to really think about the value for each of the people that are our stakeholders, and to really build a cross-functional support. So in this example, this is where an enterprise supplier information platform has been installed. It sits above the ERP systems and connects to some of the other tools and applications that might be deployed in a business. And in so doing, you have a golden record. So all instances of a supplier are actually connected together in such an environment. It also provides an external vendor portal. So when the vendor logs in, they have one point of contact for your organization, and each of their different functions can likewise interact with their counterparts within your business. Each will have a slightly different use case. So if we take the example of finance here, an ERP typically based organization, so depending on what your flavor is that you have, the goals are going to be similar, and it's going to be around, do we have good data quality, do we have process efficiency, can I have the segregation of duty so that we're reducing the risk of fraud, and potentially can we reduce the number of accounts payable inquiries so that our people can carry on doing what we need to do and not maybe answer the supplier questions in an interruptive way. So in this scenario, what you achieve by having a SIM application here, a digital SIM application, is that you can bring out all of the data points that you want from the ERP system. You can display them securely through a portal to those who have the right credentials to log in, and they can self-manage. So they can self-change locations or contact or bank details, submit an invoice, see where their invoices are. All of that, of course, would go through authorization and workflows. So the supplier has the power to request a change. The internal approvers have the governance model in place to authorize that change. And so we have a virtuous circle here where the suppliers are engaged in maintaining their own data, and that effort is put to them, and your internal staff then are looking at particularly, how do we authorize, how do we govern. Having that foundation in place gives the other information points that our quality teams, procurement, legal, could be R&D, could be operations, any of those will have a requirement of information and interaction with a supplier. And they each have their own angle, right? So quality might be focused on a particular site or a product or a location, so something that needs to be audited and approved, and there could be issues that arise, there could be corrective action plans. So if we link this back to a core supplier record, then we can start to connect the dots between what finance and what quality compliance audit are looking at. Same with procurement. Their desire to obviously make impact in terms of savings and benefits, maybe enhancements in relationships that will bring new opportunities and innovations to an organization. All of that is prescriptive around, have I got the right vendor, where are my records, can I understand our volumes, where are the angles for savings, how do I communicate effectively, can I measure performance, can I measure risk, can I measure a relationship, can I get in the 360-degree view from the supplier and from internal stakeholders to really understand what's happening here, so that I can help the business put in place the most effective and appropriate contracts that will allow us to be successful. That then links to legal, wanting to, of course, mitigate risk, to ensure the right clauses are being used within contracts, to handle disputes in the most appropriate way. And we can bring in third-party data points here. So it may be that we want to validate or do a check against a third-party watch list to ensure that we're not potentially doing business with a restricted party. Or we might want to bring in some external data points to validate maybe with the information they provided us, or to give another sense of perspective on how strong their business might be. So we see there is a clear holistic case that so often we think in siloed tools that are functionally driven, or master data tools that run across many domains from customer to supplier to product, to entity, to person. Yeah. And so that horizontal view doesn't give the view we need, and likewise the vertical view of different functions doesn't quite do it. So what we see here is a real benefit case for when we think about digital supply management, actually bringing together all of the parties into one environment. We don't need to disrupt the underlying systems. The architecture can stay as it is, but we can quite quickly and easily plug in a digital platform which will suck up the data that's relevant, that will pass back information that's necessary to those tools. So we keep that movement going, but we create a new platform, a new way of bringing together our people in a far more efficient and effective way that can transform the way that they operate on a day-to-day basis. Typical ways that we measure how effective our supply management is really revolves around savings, and there's a number of other items. So State of Flux did a survey, and what they understood was where we see a difference between leader organizations and follower organizations. Both had savings as a priority, and we understand and naturally get that. But thereafter, the priorities changed. Follower organizations were more focused on the foundational activities of cost avoidance, risk, compliance, quality. And that makes perfect sense, that when you're at the early stages of managing your supply base, you want to ensure those foundational aspects are in place and they're done effectively and appropriately. Once that foundation is established, though, leader organizations are now more interested in the richer aspects of internal stakeholder feedback, supplier feedback, on-time delivery. They also have the need to measure some of the other elements as well to ensure that they're continuing to get good cost, good quality, good performance. But they're really focused now on the higher end, the value add aspects of supply management. And digital can support that agenda too. So not only can it handle some of the underlying metric-driven fundamentals, but it can also enable and enrich the way in which information flows, is gathered, is reported, is syndicated, to enable a far richer perspective on the supplier relationship. So to build your case, we would encourage you to think about 4 fundamentals. The first is cost down. Of course, when we're asking for an investment, we're looking for a reason, something that we can go to finance with to say, hey, look, yeah, if you can provide me with X, I can return you Y. So when we look at digital supply management and building that case for change here, then there are elements around process efficiency, supply chain efficiency, maybe rationalizing around specifications or volume of suppliers or price points, that when done correctly, we can derive some really significant savings in the 10 to 30% range. And these can be delivered sooner rather than later. So these are some of the early benefits that we can deliver back to a business by putting in place these kind of digital solutions. The second is risk. So where we see risk in businesses, the way it manifests itself is typically through issues in the supply chain, so instability or events that have happened that might knock through into the business, and potential adverse activities which would impact a business reputation. So a supplier may be using inappropriate labor or following inappropriate practices. So with a digital foundation, you can gather that information, you can understand it, you can see ripple effects from afar, you can identify them early, and you can put in place early warning systems that really can benefit your business. So these are the 2, what I would call pillars that you would build your case upon. Where you start to add richness to your case is the value up and revenue up. These typically come after the first 2, because it takes a little while to filter through. But in terms of value up, it's about once we're doing these foundational activities with our suppliers, we see service levels improve, we see quality level improve, we see that start to come through effective scorecard tracking and initiating improvement efforts where we see underperforming suppliers. Can we engage and actually help them to improve their value to our organisation? Revenue up is then taking it through to the sales side. If we have more effective supply management, can we then in turn release innovation, speed to market, maybe access even new markets that would allow us to be more competitive as an organisation, that we might be able to outsell or outperform others in the marketplace. And that's where we see some, the really substantial benefits. Sometimes a little bit more difficult to capture, to measure, to connect, but it is possible. And so the model that you can use behind this, and we'll cover that in another seminar, we can build these out at a metric base, so you can have a very clear view on what's the investment in supplier information management at a digital level versus what's the return. To give you some examples of what you might want to think about when you're building your case, on the cost down aspect, robotic process automation. This is a piece where you're looking at software to take on a task that someone would have to do themselves. So for example, a certificate away, it may be, well, firstly, you might not even know it's expiring unless you've got some kind of diary management system you set up for yourself. If you do know it's expiring, you have to remind yourself to reach out to the supplier. We then need to chase that supplier, have those interactive dialogues, so emails going back and forwards. When the certificate comes in, you've got to look at it, you've got to store it somewhere, and remember to do this process all over again. Well, all of that can be automated. So with software, you can have a repository where these documents are loaded to. We can strip out the metadata from them if you don't already have it in a structured way. We can then store it and have pathways and workflows that are triggered automatically, so without a human intervention. An expiring certificate would be flagged by the software. The software would ask the supplier to load something new. It would check it when it comes in. It would validate it, maybe against an insurance database to say it's an in-force policy, and it would notify someone that this task has been completed and no further action is needed. If the supplier is unresponsive, software can carry on chasing until it's determined that that would now need human intervention. And with all of these things, you could link them to other processes. So if there's something that is critical to the supplier being able to provide you with goods and services, they might need to be blocked. And that activity, if you choose to, could also be built in. So the value here, and really think about kind of the human capital that you've got, is take away the activities that really just need to be administrative tasks. They're repetitive, they're time consuming, they just are rules driven. Pass those into a digital application and let that take its course. It can run as many as needed without any bandwidth restrictions, whereas a person can only do so much in a given day. And that's where you really start to see the benefits of RPA. Another example here in terms of cost down might be around the value of data quality. Sometimes that's difficult for organizations to put a price on. One way of thinking is when you verify data on the way in, it costs maybe $1 to do that, very low cost. If you're doing some kind of post cleanup work, so maybe a batch of data that you're sending for enrichment, maybe $10 a record. If we don't do anything and we leave the data poor, and if I had $1 for every time I heard a business saying that they've got problems with data quality, that would be a business model in itself. We know that data quality impacts our businesses, our efficiencies, our everyday. And particularly as we are more and more in a digital era, the underpinning data is really what's going to be the make or break. So with bad data in the supplier realm, they could have inefficiencies, we could have incorrect payments, we could have bad decisions that are being made that would then knock on and potentially even go out to a customer level. We can have rekeying of data, we can have the time that's lost in having to bring together disparate data sets that don't connect. All of this really around the siloed problems that we have in having applications that are standalone and just form one function or fulfill one purpose. So robotic process automation can solve these as well. We can bring together disparate data sets, we can run concurrent tasks, we can clean up automatically, we can run through all of these projects essentially in the background and be cleaning and also ensuring cleanliness of data at a very low cost. The third element then, if I'm just kind of concluding this cost down aspect to give you some examples here, might be the concept of a digital labor as a work type or as a resource type. So many businesses have an onshore offshore model, or you can have it as a functional versus shared service. Shared service can be in any kind of low cost center, or it could be however you want to structure it. But the idea being the traditional onshore labor is more costly than the offshore or the shared service labor. It could be for various reasons. Digital labor has an even lower cost. And we've seen over the years that the pre-disruptive tech, the early tech that was being used around software automation was having an impact. But with the advent of robotic process automation, we're really seeing the early days and now the more mature versions of it taking on more and more of the activity that's happening within an organization, and thereby reducing the overall labor cost. So digital labor is a real consideration, and here's how you go about figuring out what's possible. So this is something you can do right now. We're not talking about implementing software at this point. We're talking about understanding what would be a benefit case. So starting point is going to be how good's your data. Once you've got a grip of that, we need to think about the processes. So which activities don't need to be done by a person and could potentially be done by a digital work type. The next step is about mapping out those activities to really understand, well, maybe there's a short list of quick wins of items that would make sense to start with. And we need to measure that. So measure what it's taking you to do these processes now, complete an activity analysis, use digital as a work type, assign a value to that, and now you have a cost benefit analysis by role, by type, by function, by location, by however you want to obviously break that down. We of course need to look at risks, and that's a key step in here in any type of change. Risk needs to be understood, and we need to think about the future. So it's not just about obviously how are we doing things now and how they've been done, but is our business changing? Are there strategic objectives? Is there an IT roadmap that might impact us here? Is there a business structure roadmap that's coming down the path? Once we understand all of that, we can put in place a clear governance, because we need to know how data is going to be created, updated, deleted, who has the authority to do these things, and how will that be authorized. And at the end of all of this, you have then a very clear functional case. So we know our data, our process, our work types, where the strategic direction is going, how we're going to manage it going forwards, and now we have a really clear case of that we can share with others. When you're going through that process, one of the capabilities that needs to be assessed is the existing application landscape that you have. Now, it may be that you need to do some changes, it may be you don't. But if you are thinking about a change, there are some core capabilities in today's digital supply management that really are a must-have for anything that's coming into your environment. The first one is it should be able to work your way. So where we've seen in the past application limitations causing people to change the way they work and adapting to the way the software works, we've seen problems, and we've all experienced that. So software nowadays doesn't work that way. It works your way, and we think about it at a global and a local basis. So global might be a standard that is uniform across your business. Local might be an additional piece of information or an additional workflow or a slight nuance that needs to be adapted or catered for at a local level. Maybe a function, or maybe a country, it may be a category. So with processes, it should be very easy to map these things out. You can workflow it all, and in that way you can actually satisfy not only the central desire for control and command, but a local desire for adaptation and flexibility. And they can be in harmony. So this isn't a paradox, it's not one versus the other. You can actually build this together. And as that changes, as flexibility is required, then you should always be able to extend the data model, to be able to add new fields in. These shouldn't be costly activities. And if you're finding that you are concerned or not wanting to do that in your current architecture, then that's a trigger for maybe thinking that there could be some alternatives out there for you. The second is how it is to use. It should be as simple as ABC to pick up a new application. We see that with iPhones and with those kind of technologies where children can pick it up, they touch what they want, they're off. Now, enterprise applications are taking a bit of time to catch up to consumer applications, but the newer applications and the newer providers particularly are ahead of the curve. So whereas the legacy providers, their cost of change is much higher, the new entrants to the market are coming in with far more attractive user interfaces, far more engaging, guided experiences that are as simple, as intuitive as you could want them. So that's something to be considered. And the third thing is, it should work with everything you currently have and anything you want it to work with, ranging from your backend ERP to an external data source such as a United States Postal Service to validate an address, to maybe a BI tool like Domo or Tableau or Click, whatever it might be it a contract database, a quality database. These things in a digital era must be able to connect. And so a digital supplier management application needs to be agnostic of what it connects with, and it needs to be able to connect quickly and efficiently and seamlessly to be able to bring in data from those systems and syndicate back to them relevant updates that will keep everything in harmony. So the pathway you're looking for really is about constructing where am I right now, and this might seem a very basic thing to say, but it's underplayed sometimes, the importance of having a clear future state. Where are we going to? And importantly, where along this journey will value get delivered? So will we see it at the end stage in X period of months or years, or will there be a benefit that we can realize early, which now improves the business case to continue to the next phase and to the next phase? So an example, just looking at this model here, if we look at the top line, leveraging spend, many people we come in contact with initially have multiple supplier records. That means that they find it difficult in leveraging their spends because they have to bring these different records together, understand where the duplicates are, maybe understand the parent-child relationship of some of their supply chain, to really get their heads around, well, who is my ultimate supplier and how do I analyze my spend with them and what I'm buying from them, and how we're doing business here, that I might be able to consider, is there an opportunity to rationalize this? I might want to either reduce my number of suppliers, or I might need to spread my risk if they're all owned by the same ultimate parent. So this is an example is where in a digital supplier environment where you've got a SIM solution that is connected to everything else, that will then roll up all of those supplier records. It will provide a golden view, a golden record, which is a view across all of the systems and all the information points. That gives you analysis, and now you're away. So there are a real opportunity here to think about working through the pathway from your current state to your future state, and is step one, I just need something which brings together all my data. Step two might be, okay, now we're going to put some processes in place around performance or risk. Step three is we're going to do some master data governance here, and it's now going to control the creation of records. however you want to map that process out, and there'll be various other ways of doing that. So to summarize what we've discussed today, digital is coming. It's already here, so if you're ready or not, it's time to get ready. So we encourage you to really think about, if you're trying to get a mandate for change, we need to just help people understand that this is something that's inevitable, and whether you do it early or late is really the only decision that needs to be made, but something needs to be done. The quality of your data and the ability to connect your systems will be the main barriers to your digital success. So please take those into account when you're thinking about the solution. It's not about the features, the functionality. In today's software, that's the easy part. It's the underlying detail is really where the rubber meets the road, and which will define which systems are capable of providing you the digital future you need, versus those which might be quick wins but have a very limited lifespan. Understand obviously how digital delivers benefits to not just you but across the whole business. Mapping digital processes as a work type is a key opportunity for you to think about the benefits. Build your case across the fundamentals, so include not just cost down but risk, value and revenue. If your legacy architecture's really not there in terms of its ability to change or to have automation or to integrate with other systems, if that's too costly and too slow, then one option is to evaluate replacement. Another option is to evaluate augmentation. So there are applications that you can put in on top of these, so your backbone architecture stays as it is, but you apply a front end, if you will, which would allow the vendor community, your user community, to engage with one another, to undertake these activities, and that information and data will then be shared with your existing systems. So could be far more cost effective to look at just putting in a portal, a platform that sits on top of your ERP systems, and not actually doing some fundamental changes there. Final piece, have a clear roadmap and deliver benefits along the journey. That's obviously important as we're getting the buy-in of people on the way, particularly obviously on finance, that we need to have something that returns on your investment this year, next year, the year after, etc. So we thank you for your participation today. In the future, we've got some upcoming masterclasses. We've got how to build a business case, so at a very granular level, at a numbers level. How would you calculate it? What metrics would you use? What kind of value points to quantify the dollar value of a change? We have a practical guide to system implementation if you are looking at putting in place a supplier information management system. What are the pitfalls that we can point out so you don't fall into them? And a case study from BAE Systems, the lessons learned from their implementation and what they learned as an organisation. And that's a very interesting one, and we encourage you to be able to join that if you can. If you have any questions, we're always available at HICXsolutions.com. We welcome your questions today, and we look forward to being able to answer them for you. So thank you for your participation. If you're viewing this in retrospect, then please visit HICXsolutions.com and we'll be happy to speak with you. Thank you.